The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect the policies and the position of Now You Know.
Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint, together with experts and newsmakers who make sense of the week's biggest issues and stories. I'm Barnaby Lowe in tonight's conversation. Weeks of criticism over how President Rodrigo Duterte is responding to Chinese aggression in the West Philippine Sea. Now his administration is pointing fingers at the previous leadership. One of the key figures being blamed, former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, a staunch critic of Duterte. In 2012, during the height of the Scarborough Shoal standoff, Trillanes led Backchannel negotiations with China, a failure, former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile said on Monday, which led to China seizing control of Scarborough. Trillanes fired back, saying that has been resolved by the Philippines' victory in 2016 in the arbitration court, and that the issue now is in the Spratlys. Trillanes has publicly declared his intent to run for the presidency next year, but he says he will step aside if Vice President Leni Robredo decides to vie for the position. All right, and joining us on this episode of Viewpoint tonight is none other than former Senator and key opposition figure, Antonio Trillanes IV. Good evening, Sir Sonny.
Good evening, Barnaby, and good evening to our viewers.
Thank you very much. Medyo na late na po tayo nagsimula, so if you don't mind, I'll get right to it. First of all, your reaction when Malacanang announced that former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile was going to appear in a cabinet meeting last Monday. Of course, it happened last Monday. It already happened. But your reaction when that was announced?
I was really curious and interested in which version of the story Mr. Enrile would come out with at that weekly appearance of Mr. Duterte, because Enrile has been historically notorious for lying in public. As often mentioned, lying comes out naturally as breathing for Mr. Enrile.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what you're saying is that you were already expecting him to lie about you?
Yes, definitely.
Uh-huh.
And we saw that. He was given the national audience. He was given the opportunity to squeeze blood out of stone, but he wasn't able to, and it came out as a dud, unfortunately for them.
Okay. All right then. Kasi ang sinabi niya nung sa cabinet meeting na yun, so in short, he said it in so many words, of course. But in short, ang sinasabi niya ay isa kayo sa may kasalanan kung bakit nawala yung Scarborough Shoal sa Pilipinas noong 2012. Ano yung version ninyo, Sir Sonny, sa nangyari sa 2012? First of all, yung back-channel negotiations ninyo with China.
Okay. Let's provide the context first. Noong April of 2012, we had a situation, we had a standoff at the Scarborough Shoal. Let me clarify, Scarborough Shoal is the one off the seas of Zambales. Spratlys is the one off the seas of Palawan. These are hundreds of kilometers apart. Okay, the situation there is similar to what we have now in Julian Felipe Reef in the Spratlys, wherein 80 to 100 ships swarmed Scarborough Shoal. Pinalibutan nila yan in and around the shoal. Those are Chinese Coast Guard vessels and fishing boats. Then we had a standoff for the next 3 months. Intense ang situation doon. The tension was high, and there was a high probability of a miscalculation and an unarmed conflict between our Coast Guard ships who were there and the Chinese Coast Guard ships. At that time, there was a stalemate in the front channel. Front channel meaning the formal channels, the DFA and the Ministry of Foreign Relations of China. So, President Aquino opted to use another foreign policy tool, which is the Backchannel. Okay? Legal po
Sorry,
yan. Marami kasing interpretation sa Backchannel is illegal. It is not. Ano? Ginagamit yan ng mga states to resolve crisis. The US often use that tool to resolve crises like the Cuban Missile Crisis during the 60s that averted the Third World War with Russia. They also used that to close or end the Vietnam War and the Korean War and so on and so forth. So, legal siya. It's a foreign policy tool. Okay. So, when I was designated by President Aquino...
Pero bakit daw po kayo? I think that was what he was questioning. Bakit daw po kayo, of all people?
Okay. Una-una, that question is condescending. Ang tingin sa akin ni Enrile kasi parang I'm just a junior officer na walang ko alam. Una-una ganito yan. It's the prerogative of the president. And the primary ingredient or the essential element in designating a back-channel negotiator is trust or trustworthiness of the negotiator. Trust in the fidelity to the messages being exchanged and trust in the capacity or ability of that negotiator to accomplish the mission. In my case, I was a former naval officer, and in fact, yung Scarborough na yan yung napapatrolyahan namin noon. I know that the terrain, so to speak. And that served me well at some point during one critical part of the negotiations. Ngayon, ang situation when I got in, it was tense. So the mission given to me by President Aquino was to de-escalate the situation and to reduce the number of ships. So for the next 3 months, we were able to reduce the number of ships of China from 80 to 100 ships to 3. At nasa labas na to na Scarborough Shoal. As nawala na yung tension. Ngayon, I am disputing all of these claims being repeated over and over by the media, all over the media, that we lost Scarborough and that these 3 ships have seized Scarborough. That is definitely not true. Because if it is true that we have lost Scarborough, then the question is, bakit walang reclamation dyan? Bakit walang base dyan ang China? At bakit wala silang barko dun sa loob? Where are the 80 to 100 ships na sinasabi nilang hindi naman daw umalis? You can check that out. I challenge the media. Pumunta kayo doon. Tignan nyo. Wala. So, all of these insinuations and allegations against me and against the Aquino administration were based on a lie. Kaya nga, Barnaby, this administration filed a case against me, based on that lie noong 2016, and it was already dismissed by the Ombudsman for lack of evidence. Kasi nga, yun lang video ni Enrile na nag-iintriga siya, ano daw ginawa ko, ganon. Si Duterte, ganon din, binenta ko raw yung isla. Pero nung pagdating sa korte, sa investigation, wala sila na-produce. And it was dismissed. Now, they're sitting there for the past 5 years. They have all the records in Malacanang and in the Department of Foreign Affairs. Anong ginagawa nila? Asan yun? Ano ang ginawa kong mali? Ano ang ginawa ni President Aquino and myself na illegal? And look at the people accusing us. You have Enrile, the so-called inventor of fake news, the guy who faked his ambush to as a pretext for the declaration of martial law. Then you have Duterte, the pathological liar, and going back to Enrile, the plunderer. As in his 90s, plunderer pa rin yung mama. And now you're giving credence to these people. Now look at us. President Aquino was never involved in any corruption case. Same goes for myself. Now, I believe that those facts alone would speak for themselves.
Okay. I just want to go back to yung usapan na did we lose or did we not lose Scarborough Shoal to China back in 2012? Because your assertion is that we did not lose it and the media got it wrong or is getting it wrong right now. But isn't it also true, Senator, that yung mga mangingisda natin back in 2012, in fact, 2013, 2014, hinahabol yan ng mga Chinese Coast Guard yan pag pupunta sila sa Scarborough. Nahihirapan sila na to the point na hindi lang nahihirapan at hindi talaga sila makapangisda sa Scarborough Shoal. And in that sense, hindi ba we lost Scarborough Shoal?
Okay. I conducted a committee hearing. Again, it's in the records of the Senate. Lahat ng security officials of the Aquino Administration, this was, I think, October of 2013, more than a year after the Backchannel negotiations. And I asked them individually if we lost Scarborough. All of them said, no, we did not. And the Navy, in fact, showed satellite images of Scarborough showing that the presence of Filipino fishermen. Now, there would be some points that some cases being reported that the fishermen are being blocked. But during that time, in fact,
water
Sorry?
cannon, right? You mean water cannon ng mga fishermen?
that was during the standoff. That was during the standoff, not after. Okay, now, granting that there was such an incident, the question is, what is this administration doing about it? Wala namang nagpipigil kay Duterte na magpadala ka. If they have 3 ships there, then send 3 ships as well. Ganun ba yun? Coast Guard ships, 3 Coast Guard ships can control your island if you believe that that is yours. What is stopping you from sending your ships? Assume totoo yung nire-report. Pero nga sinasabi ko nga, I conducted at least 2 committee hearings about it precisely to check that. Kasi ina-accuse na binenta raw yung Scarborough, we lost it. Sabi ko, where is the media getting all of this information? Tingnan nyo, they're not inside the shoal. Therefore, they are not in possession of the shoal. They're positioned outside, which you can also do. Di ba? Para matapatan mo. So, ano rito kaya in fact, because of that oft-repeated statement that we lost Scarborough, even the foreign media have decided to accept it. Sinuko natin based on that assertion. But I believe we have succeeded in that back-channel talks. Nawala yung tension na yun. We didn't lose it. Hindi na-reclaim yan. I don't know kung paano pa natin ma-interpret yan na pagkatalo kasi umalis sila eh. Sila yung umalis
Okay. Two things po kasi. So, just very recently, just siguro po, this week din po yata yun, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe very late last week, yung pong mangingisda from Pangasinan.
Yes.
From Pangasinan, who asked President Duterte that question during the debate where he answered na magje-jet ski daw po siya papunta sa South China Sea. Sabi po niya na at many points during the last several years, hindi talaga sila nakakapangisda dyan And until now, hindi daw po sila, nahihirapan daw po silang makapangisda dyan. So that's
You
one. I'll go to the next one later. Yeah.
Okay, yun na nga yun. Granting that that is true, ang question is, what are they doing about it? Kasi yung question about losing Scarborough, sinis yung Scarborough, babalik nga ako sa tanong bakit wala na sila doon? In fact, I'm challenging the media to review your reports noong April to June of 2012 para malaman nyo yung situation doon. Di ba? 80 to 100 ships, ando doon sila, nag-swarm sila. Saan na sila napunta? If they're saying, umalis tayo, hindi sila umalis, ba't wala na doon? Di ba? Ngayon, yung possession, definitely, they are not in possession of Scarborough. They are not in there. Kung i-concede nila ng we have lost Scarborough, the question is, bakit hindi nila nilalagyan dyan? Ba't walang reclamation dyan? Di ba? It doesn't make sense precisely because it is not true. We didn't lose Scarborough. Physically, we can go there if we want to. And the question is, again, stopping Duterte from doing that.
And the second point is, or maybe the second question is, you didn't sell Scarborough to China because that is what, and I'm not saying this as a fact, I am saying this as something that former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile has been accusing you of doing since 2012. There was that hearing in 2012 where he said there were these notes from former Philippine ambassador to China, Sonia Brady, indicating that you had basically sold Philippine sovereignty to China, saying that you had told the Chinese side that the US has left its alliance with the Philippines, that former DFA Secretary
Barnaby, I would need to stop you. You know why? Because you're reading from a polluted source. Because he was, where is that Brady notes to begin with? Last Monday, he had the opportunity to show that the Duterte administration is in control of the DFA. Where is that? Now, let me just clarify the context of that in case, even assuming that there are such notes to begin with. Ambassador Brady was appointed as ambassador around May, but she wasn't able to go to Beijing until late July or early August. My negotiations happened from May to late July. So, Ambassador Brady was never present in any of the Backchannel negotiations. So, the context na binabasa ni Enrile doon, he was insinuating that I was telling the Chinese all of those things. No. Those notes, assuming na existent siya, were my briefing to Ambassador Brady the first time she set foot in Beijing. That was late July and early August when I was wrapping up my back-channel negotiations. And I wanted to brief her. I disclosed everything precisely because once I leave, I would now turn over everything to her. So she would understand the whole negotiations, the whole context. Now, she was taking notes at that time, everything, and we were doing it within the comforts of the Philippine Embassy in Beijing. There were no Chinese present there. So I'm going to be as candid and transparent as possible to an ambassador who may take up the cudgels of that negotiations should it be pursued. So yun ang ano ko doon na
You're saying you could not have said these things.
Definitely, I could not have said that to the Chinese. Ambassador Brady, as I mentioned, was never present in any of my negotiations. And why would I do that? And the bottom line, bakit napaalis ko yung mga Chinese vessels? Right? Let's go to the facts. These are verifiable facts. Enrile has been peddling lies over and over. And last Monday, binigyan ulit ng space. Ano? Hindi pwede yun. Kumaga, anong ginawa niya nung Monday? He could have shown or given the Brady notes if he really had them to Duterte. He didn't give them. He didn't give anything. And what he gave the Filipino people were just intrigues. Bakit siya yung inano? Tinyente lang yan. Parang bakit regardless? I was able to accomplish the mission. Siguro siya, he was never entrusted such a serious mission all throughout his political career, which is sad for him because the critical element there is trustworthiness, which he could never have. And yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that it was the negotiations basically were successful, and that the end result was a win-win for both the Philippines and China. But what the Duterte administration is saying now, or has been questioning all throughout the last 2 or 3 weeks, is why, bakit daw nag-withdraw ang Pilipinas ng ships from Scarborough, and President Duterte himself has been emphasizing, he keeps emphasizing na kung talagang if the Aquino administration really thought that that was the Philippines waters, then bakit daw nag-withdraw ang Pilipinas?
I don't know if people aren't listening, pero sinasabi ko nga, that very statement, that oft-repeated statement in the media, that nag-withdraw tayo sila hindi, that is inaccurate and that is a lie. I keep on mentioning 80 to 100 ships yung barko ng China dyan sa Scarborough. Asa na sila? Wala sila. So
Pero
doon
may
tayo
natilang
nandoon sa labas yun. Now, sabi ko nga, and yun ang basis ni President Aquino ng pag-file ng arbitration case. Pero to say na hindi sila umalis sila eh. Ano yun? Kumaga, we're not counting the 97 ships na wala na doon from inside the shoal. So, yun yung issue dito. Kumaga, nililihis eh. And sabi ko nga sa media, bakit nyo ba in-embrace yung statement na yan palagi na umalis tayo, hindi sila umalis? Whoever said that, tanungin nyo nga, bakit, una-una, bakit kung umalis sila, kung umalis tayo, hindi sila umalis, ba't hindi tayo bumalik? Dapat kung sino man ang nagpepedal ng statement na yun, yun yung tanungin. Sir, bakit kung simultaneous withdrawal yung usapan, bakit tayo nauna? Tapos kung nauna tayo, hindi sila umalis, ba't hindi ka bumalik? Alam nyo, kung meron lang reporter na nagtanong yan, mailalagay sa lugar kung sino man yung source niyang line na yan na paulit-ulit. It's so basic, alam nyo, it's so verifiable. It's unfortunate na in-embrace na yun. Yun na pinatotoo na yung saying na lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth.
Okay, right. So in that case, you're also saying na tumupad yung China sa usapan.
Ano nangyari? Wala sila doon eh. Wala silang reclamation doon. Imagine this. Doon sa Spratlys, yung inoccupy nila yung Mischief Reef, tinayuan nila na structures. They already have 9 structures there. They don't have any structures here. If the media is saying, nakuha na nila yung Scarborough, na-seize yung Scarborough, what's stopping them from putting up structures there? Tell me.
Okay. So,
right? It defies logic. It's for everyone to see.
Okay, Senator. I'm going to push this one just one last time. So then, why did the administration file an arbitration case against China?
Because while the withdrawal of the 97 ships, they escalated the situation, and reduce the number of ships, which which was my mission in the first place. So I accomplished that. May tatlong naiwan. And when they refused to leave, nag-file ng case.
Yes,
Okay,
but
what
you
does
just said that tatlo na
that,
iwan ay sa labas,
nasa labas?
which was still a problem.
Well, if you it is a problem because they're there, but sa what's this international maritime law, anybody can justify right of passage, of innocent passage. Ngayon, kung gusto mong tapatan, if it's really bothering you, you can send 3 Coast Guard ships of your own. What is stopping you from doing that? If it's really bothersome. Now, imagine if there are 3 American ships lying to around one of our islands. Would it be a problem or not? Right?
Oh,
Does that mean they are in possession or they have seized an island? No, it is not. 3 Coast Guard ships of China couldn't possibly seize an island. And if so, they could have secured the entry of Scarborough and
yes. So
started that project to
right.
assert
So that's
their ownership.
right. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking. What were those 3 ships a problem? That's why the Aquino administration decided to file the case in The Hague.
Yes. So that's the course of action of the Aquino administration, and we won. In fact, it negated any claim of ownership of China in that part of the sea. Okay, so that's what the Aquino administration did. But what did Duterte do after he assumed office? He said he would treat our victory in the arbitral tribunal as a piece of paper that can be thrown in the wastebasket. And what is he doing with the real problem right now in Julian Felipe Reef? He keeps on pointing to Scarborough 9 years ago, when in fact a crisis is staring him in the face in the Spratlys, and he's not doing anything about it. So, isn't this obvious? An obvious diversion or misdirection? And the fact that we're talking about Scarborough shows that they're succeeding, because we're not talking about his ineptness and his what we call this negligence or dereliction of duty in Spratlys.
I'm gonna now start talking about the Spratlys because obviously there has been a lot of criticism, in particular of the rhetoric of President Duterte, perceived as being pro-China, or at the very least, warm towards China. Pero lately, in the last few days, he has been saying, well, we have our ships there, they're not leaving. So are you seeing a turning point?
No. Ano to eh? I can't imagine people falling into that trap again of believing Duterte. I've documented dozens of lies of Duterte. This president is pathological in his lying. He can't control it. And it's going to be a blunder or a big mistake for all of us to keep on believing him. No, it's time we call him to account for his actions and demand actual solutions to problems. He does that. He feels the pressure, so he needs to play into the crowd, hoping that the pressure would be lessened. But at the end of the day, he's not doing anything about it.
So kulang pa rin para sa, or maybe what I'm getting from you is this is all a show for now.
Definitely,
Because he's losing popularity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, nararamdaman nila, tinatamaan sila. So they need to change the narrative. They first misdirected or diverted the attention by pinning the blame on that Scarborough incident. I keep on telling everybody the fact that we don't have any crisis in Scarborough right now should have been credited as a success on the Aquino administration for resolving it, right? But again, that lie had been embraced, unfortunately, by the media, who could have verified it further, but they just moved on and just accepted it as a fact. So now we're dealing with that again and again. I've been explaining myself the past 9 years. Believe me, their allegation that I sold the Scarborough, that is even absurd. It goes to the point of stupidity even for anybody to believe that. How can a senator like myself possibly sell an island? And why would China buy something from me? Right? I was just a back-channel negotiator of President Aquino. I am merely a messenger. He would give me instructions, he would give me messages to be delivered to the Chinese negotiators, and then I would receive the counter proposals and I present it to President Aquino for his approval. That's all there is. Again, this is legal. And sabi ko nga, tingnan naman natin, si President Aquino, wala nang kaso yan. He's an honest man. He's a decent politician. Would he allow shenanigans committed by myself or anybody during this negotiation? Of course not. Ako hanggang ngayon, wala naman akong kaso about it, or for that matter, kinasuhan ako pero dinismiss kasi walang ebidensya. And yet, look at these people accusing us.
I'm just going to go back.
So lopsided. It's so lopsided. It should have been obvious to the Filipino people whose eyes are wide open to the realities.
I'm just going to go back to the current situation in the Spratlys. Do you think that the 200 or so Chinese militia ships that are there right now, not necessarily lahat sila nasa Julian Felipe Reef, pero mukhang nagkalat na sila sa Spratlys ngayon, could that have been prevented? And could that have been prevented particularly through our win in 2016 in the arbitration court?
Okay, it may not have been prevented because China would have their own plans regardless of the victory of the Philippines in the arbitral tribunal. But it could be resolved. It was resolved in 2012 using the backdoor, the back channel negotiations route. It could be resolved just the same using that or other policy options. I laid out different policy options to resolve this. They can opt to use the political policy options, like calling out for support or soliciting support from the ASEAN, EU, UN, or applying international media pressure. And another one is to use the diplomatic route. Aside from the front channel and back channel, we can also initiate the a fisheries agreement between claimant states. Then also a non-conflict military options like joining the freedom of navigation operations of the US and other allied countries. We could restore and implement the VFA and the EDCA and conduct naval exercises there. And we can continue to modernize the AFP. So all of these options can be done. It's not the false dilemma being presented by Duterte that it's either you surrender or you go to war with China. No. There is an array of options.
Yeah, ano ba ang problema sa nagiging response ng Duterte administration dito? Because we're seeing daily diplomatic protests from the DFA. We're seeing increased presence of the Philippines in the Spratlys. But at the same time, we're not seeing President Duterte shift his rhetoric. Just this morning, former AFP chief, former Senator Rodolfo Biazon said, magulo, confusing, there is no one policy. So for you, what is the problem here?
The problem is Duterte. I believe he is compromised. I believe that because he took Beijing money during the 2016 campaign, yun na yun. He cannot do what is right. He would be forced to do the bidding of China. And believe me, he is also compromised in so many other ways, not only that campaign funds. And that's a problem. If you have that as the chief foreign policy architect, then you are sure to lose in this geopolitical game.
Mm-hmm. But his spokesperson Harry Roque says, yun daw pong goodwill that we have developed with China has allowed our fishermen to go out and fish without being stopped for the most part by China. But of course, I would be the first to say na hindi totoo yan because just very
so,
recently, yeah.
Oh, so you know I'm ano doon. Of course, Harry Roque is irrelevant. Harry Roque is part of the propaganda apparatus. In fact, I'm surprised that the media is even giving space to Harry Roque. Dapat pagka na-prove nyo na nagsisinungaling yung spokesman, then you mute him out. You demand to talk to other people. The media isn't supposed to be disrespected like that. Otherwise, wala na eh. Garbage na yung pinapasok sa atin, and you're forced to publish garbage as well. It doesn't do justice to your profession, and it's unfair to the listening and viewing public. So, ganyan yung situation natin. Ang dami, sabi ko nga, no, there is an array of options there. Hindi niya ginagawa. And you know what? What Duterte did differently nung nag-assume siya, he prevented the naval patrols at the EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. When I was still in the Navy, pagka mayroong fishing boat ng China or any foreign country na nagpo-poach sa EEZ natin, hinuhuli namin. It's not happening anymore, unfortunately. Kaya yung sinasabing posturing na yan, ano lang yan, that's all for show. Because the real work, dapat hinuhuli nyo yan. Kasi exclusive economic zone nga eh. They're poaching in our waters, then you have the right to apprehend them. So, he stopped that.
Okay, final question on this. I'm just gonna go back to, and I hope you don't mind, to former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, and then I'm gonna move on to election-related issues. 2012 meeting between you, President Aquino, Secretary Del Rosario, and him. What is your recollection of that meeting? Because during Monday's cabinet meeting, he was singing praises of President Duterte and saying that President Duterte is doing things right. But Marites Vitog, who wrote a book about the whole Scarborough Incident and all the way to the arbitration win, is saying otherwise. You were there.
Yeah, I was there. So, okay, that executive cabinet meeting was covered by the media, at least at the start. Okay, it happened around July of 2012. So I was reporting the results of the back-channel negotiations. He was seated beside me. So yung claim niya nung September or 3 months after o 2 months after na sinasabi niya, parang hindi niya alam na nag-back-channel ako, gano'n. Kita niyo he was lying because he was seated beside me as he admitted. Okay? His position, in fact, I don't remember his position. He just asked President Aquino if I was authorized to conduct back channel, and President Aquino said, yes, I authorized him. That's after that I remember he just kept quiet. So yung sinasabi niya, hindi raw niya nalalaman as Senate President, this guy keeps on changing stories and changing positions depending on his convenience. Now, I would assume that that the what was written by Ms. Marites Vitug's book was accurate at that time. I can imagine that she did the interview and that's what Enrile said to her. Now, apparently, Enrile switched sides again. And you can understand why. Because Enrile has an outstanding plunder case. Ngayon, sasabihin niyan kung ano gusto ni Enrile. Malay mo, maareglo niya yun. Di ba? Sabi ko nga, itong tao na ito, time and again, sa haba-haba ng kanyang political life, walang ginawang mabuti ito para sa taong bayan. Even that 1986 participation, ano yun? He was just forced into a corner kasi na-discover lang yung ano nila, yung coup nila against Marcos. He wanted to grab power for himself. And when he failed, doon lang humingi ng saklolo. And it was just providential that Cory Aquino and Cardinal Sin responded. He's not his proponent for that historical event. Anyway,
go ahead.
now, okay. As for that cabinet meeting, it's supposed to be as all executive meetings should have is classified in nature, especially on matters of national security and foreign relations. That's why even in the Senate, when they're about to divulge something with national security or foreign relations considerations, we move to executive session. People should understand that there are sensitive matters that cannot be divulged in public because it may compromise our position. And that was my position in that Senate debate with Senator Enrile. We were talking about the splitting of Camarines Sur. At least I was. That was the subject of my privileged speech. But Enrile was interpellating me on a matter that was covered by that executive cabinet meeting. I wasn't about to violate the confidentiality of that meeting. And the fact of the matter was I was still the back-channel negotiator, and I may still be tapped to negotiate further in case that incident would relapse or would recur. So, but really doesn't care if he wants to punish you or hostage you or blackmail you. He would do that. Andun siya eh. Alam niyang bawal yun. Bawal pag-usapan yun. But he would do that.
Well, you talked about Juan Ponce Enrile's political life, which we know is one of the longest in Philippine history. Now let's talk about your political life. You had declared your intention to run as the opposition candidate for presidency next year. Can you clarify your intention for announcing that? Some people are saying, well, it's to pressure Vice President Leni Robredo into deciding whether she would be running for president or not. Some people saying you're dividing the opposition. So Which is which?
Okay. Hindi alam nung nakakarami that I informed the camp of Vice President Lenny, the leadership of the Liberal Party, Bayan, Tindig Pilipinas, and other different personalities about my intention to prepare to run for president in case VP Lenny opts not to run for president. And that was very clear in my messages to them and in my announcement eventually about my changing of status in the Isambayan selection process. That primarily was the impetus or that requirement or the start of that selection process precipitated my changing of my status. And I was very clear that I'm going to give way if and when VP Lenny definitively decides to run for president. So how can you? I can't imagine how one would possibly spin it as dividing the opposition. It is not. I concede that between VP Lenny and myself, she would have a better platform and therefore better chances of winning in 2022 than myself. She would be in a better position to raise funds. Right now, I'm just teaching in Ateneo and UP as a lecturer. So I don't have that. But one thing that we cannot allow to happen is that the opposition would lose by default. Because even according to VP Lenny, her decision in September is not only for the presidency, but she's open to all other options, including not running at all. So that possibility alone would force us to prepare this early, because if we would only prepare by September, it would be too late. And
But you're
I
not
believe
pressuring her by any means.
definitely not. She can take her time. She has her own decision-making process. We would have done it differently. As in fact, I am doing it differently. I am right now preparing because I know I cannot. I cannot start preparing by September because by then you would just be focused on preparing your campaign and how to win the elections and not how to govern after. This part of the campaign preparation is where when you develop policies or policy prescriptions to solve the different problems of the country. I
I,
believe I'm just more of a planner than anything.
I understand. Okay, but you also said that Vice President Lenny Robredo is preparing for a run for governor of Camarines Sur. Where is this
Yeah.
coming from?
Okay. Probably that could be a mistake on my part. I could have used exploring or other other words than preparing because it's all relative. I just figured that transferring your residence to a place outside Naga City to make yourself eligible for a gubernatorial run is preparing, but for the VP camp, they're saying it's just exploring. So it's subjective.
Okay, all right. So then you had assumed, but now you're saying maybe you assumed wrong, and you agree with what they're saying now that she's just exploring it.
We'll take the word of the vice president that she is open to all options. Although, if you would ask her, according to her, she prefers a run for a local post, particularly for governor.
Okay, all right. So now the question is, do you think the opposition can win? Because just a few days ago, Brother Armin Luistro, who's one of the conveners of Sambayan, said na marami naman daw ang gustong tumakbo for the opposition, but there are concerns of winnability plus yun nga, yung campaign finances. So realistically, what do you think about the chances of the opposition winning, in particular the presidency?
Okay. I believe the opposition can win. And not only that, the opposition must win. Okay. We have an existential element in these 2022 elections. I believe that if the opposition loses this one, then that's it. It's goodbye democracy and goodbye Philippines. Duterte, for the past 5 years, has run our country to the ground. And it's about to reach a point of irreversibility, especially if they win in 2022. So that's how high the stakes are in 2022. And that's why we must endeavor um, and try to exhaust all our energies to make sure that we would win. And that's why I have presented myself this early because it cannot be done in September, as far as I'm concerned. Now,
Uh,
just
Okay.
for the winnability, let me just cite some specific cases of seemingly impossible campaigns, but eventually won. My case in 2007, I was 1.2%, number 65 in the surveys. I was detained. I didn't have any money, no party, no access to media, everything. The armchair political analysts all over the country didn't give me a chance to win at all. But the Filipino people decided otherwise. They wanted this person to be the representative in the Senate, and they made me win. And that's what democracy is all about. The power is in the hands of the voters. You cannot determine winnability now because the elections is not going to be next week. We still have a year. Okay, now fast forward a bit to the 2010 elections. We have two cases there. First, the case of Vice President Binay. He was also 1% when he started against the 40% of then Secretary Marojas. He was running with the opposition. He won. Okay. Next case study there is the one of President Aquino. Around this time, President Aquino, then Senator Noynoy Aquino, wasn't even considered to be presidentiable. The person leading the service then initially was Noli Di Castro, then eventually Manny Villar. Then when a series of events eventually led to Noynoy Aquino being the candidate for president, in just a span of 1 month, from 0 to 60+%. So that's how dynamic Philippine electoral politics is.
Right.
The forward again in 2016, you have two cases there. One of Leni Robredo. She was 2% at the start. She beat an established political name in Marcos. Next, Duterte. Duterte wasn't even running until late November of 2015. And the first time he was included in the surveys, he was number 4, and that was January of 2016. He eventually won. For a good year, the leading candidate in the surveys was Grace Poe at 40+%. So time and again, you have these case studies, and yet the media and some armchair political analysts still cite winnability as a factor, as though they have some crystal ball determining who's gonna win or not. When
We
we've
don't
always
definitely don't have we in the media definitely don't have a crystal ball.
exactly.
But I would just like to
So
point out that on the other hand, in 2019, the results were very predictable. So it could go either way. What are the lessons that the opposition has learned from 2019?
okay, from 2019, I was part of the selection process there. We started around April of 2018. So in the context of our times, that was a month ago, we got shut out. So one lesson learned there, you have to prepare early. And that's why there should be that sense of urgency now, because we're even later, preparing later now at this point than we were in 2019 when we got shut out. And this time, with the stakes even so much higher than in 2019. It's going to be, was this irrational, or meaning you won't be able to justify why you're going to prepare late when you had that experience already in 2019. That's just my take. But then there are circumstances that are way different from 2019, as we would have in 2022. I believe the changing political tides would be a game changer. 2019, Duterte was still unexposed to the majority of the population. They still think of him as some visionary or some good executive. But then the pandemic changed that. He was exposed to be this lying, incompetent, corrupt local official, and they're not about to be taken for another ride. They have learned the lesson, and they would prevent another Duterte to be president in 2022. So that's something going for us.
Okay. And if you were to run for president, what would be the first thing that you would do? This is my final question. But this is hypothetical, of course, because you had already said that if Vice President Lenny Robredo is running for president, then you won't run for president. But if you were running for president, what would be the first thing that you would do to get us out of this pandemic?
Okay, for the pandemic, it's all about rolling out the vaccination process, right? That's all the aspects of governance won't be able to move as fast as we want, like economic recovery, security sector reform, governance reforms, anti-corruption programs, if we're not going to finally close this pandemic problem. So we're going to fast track the vaccination process. Then we're going to prepare this time. We will have to assume that there could be another surge. So we're going to increase the capacity of our healthcare system to absorb another surge. And that would include treatment rooms, isolation rooms, ICUs, so increased ventilators, oxygens, and other critical equipment, and also the mass mobilization of our healthcare workers. There are so many nursing graduates out there under board, but you can tap them as nursing aides. You can employ them. There are so many family doctors out there that we can also employ temporarily, at least, so that all of these patients could be attended. So you're preparing for a surge, but at the same time, fast tracking the vaccination rollout. So it's all about that. Then after that, we can now proceed with the governance agenda. And in this age of multitasking, you don't do one task at a time. You will do all of these things simultaneously. And we're in the process of crafting or finishing our program of government, so that by the time we file, we would be ready to present it to the public.
Mm. All right. Okay. I don't mean to sound optimistic, but of course, we all hope that we can get out of this pandemic even for the election next year. Thank you very much, former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, for your time this Friday evening. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this episode of Viewpoint. And thank you, Senator Trillanes. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. to this episode of Viewpoint. Do catch us live every week here on Now You Know's Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube pages as well. Regularly at 6 in the evening on Saturdays, but sometimes, just like this week, on a Friday evening. For updates on our upcoming episodes, please join our Facebook group. Just search for Viewpoint on Now You Know. Again, my name is Barnaby Lowe. This has been Viewpoint Now You Know.